All right, it is time to do our power rankings leading into wild card weekend. And if I'm being 100% honest, this list was a little bit rough to make because certain teams I didn't know where to place them. I didn't want to place certain teams too high and I didn't want to put certain teams too low because a lot of these teams have major flaws. I think this is the season adding the 17th game to the season. It kind of exposed the flaws that teams have even more than in years past. So let's just get into our power rankings. Coming in at number 14, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I think it's quite obvious to anybody that's watching that the Steelers are the worst team in the playoffs this year because it's just a miracle that the fact that they're here. They had to win a game against the Ravens, which was absolutely brutal, disgusting, and ugly, but it turned out to be honestly quite a fantastic game, quite a fantastic finish to that game. But the Steelers as a whole, this team is not very good. Some just stats to help put it into perspective. They're the fourth worst run offense in the NFL, the third worst in yards per attempt in passing, and they're the worst run defense in the NFL. Now, the Steelers wouldn't have even been in the playoffs if they hadn't beat the Ravens and the Colts and the Jaguars game ending the way it did, and then the Sunday Night Football game couldn't end in a tie. But the fact that the Steelers are in here is just a testament to how good Tomlin is. And I guess you can throw up some credit to Big Ben too. I mean, obviously Big Ben is a complete shell of himself. It just, to me, when I see him throw the football down the field, it looks like an absolute struggle. But the fact that the Steelers are here is just insane in my mind. I mean, credit to them. They fought all season long. They were able to get into the playoffs. They play the Chiefs in the wild card round, so I mean, even as a Chiefs fan, I think a fan on the outside could look like and be like, all right, this is probably Big Ben's final game, and he's probably going to get blown off the field because that's what happened the first time. But the Steelers, they made the playoffs. You have to make this list, and so I have the Steelers at number 14. Coming in at number 13, we have the New England Patriots. Now, I'm sure Patriots fans, I should say, are happy to be back in the playoffs after missing it from last year. However, as excited we were at times for Mac Jones this season, he's not winning them a single playoff game if you ask me. Because if you look at how he played against the Dolphins, he played pretty bad. So the Patriots, if they can't run the ball, and if their defense is having a bad day or having an off day just a little bit, relying on Mac Jones to throw the ball, make big time throws is not something I think he's quite ready for, especially in a big time spot when it comes to a playoff game. But they are playing the Bills. They did beat them earlier this season. It was a really disgusting game if we're being completely honest. However, the Patriots, as much as we know Bill Belichick, Josh McDaniels, and the fact that they'll get them in the right places to hopefully, at least if they win this game, it's not going to be ugly, or it's not going to be pretty, it's going to be ugly. So we know the history of Belichick and getting people ready, but I just think that the Patriots have massive limitations when it comes to their quarterback and Mac Jones, and I have them at number 13. Coming in at number 12 is the Las Vegas Raiders. They had an unbelievable season. Good and bad. I mean, if you look at the bad, you look at all the off-the-field issues that they had, the Henry Ruggs, John Gruden situation, just the fact that they're even here is absolutely insane. And I know people like Raiders fans were crapping all over Derek Carr, and I mean, it's fun to make fun of him. I mean, he has problems when he plays football, like missing receivers and a whole bunch of fumbling issues that he has. But the attitude that Derek Carr brings to the NFL and his team is just absolutely remarkable. It's awesome. And you have to give credit to Rich Bisaccia. Coming into an awful situation, getting that team that was in a bad situation, helping them finish 10-7, beating the Chargers in honestly one of the greatest football games of my lifetime. I mean, the Chiefs-Rams game is up there, but this is honestly the second best football game I have ever watched in my lifetime. That game was fantastic from start to finish. It was a freaking mess at times. It was pure joy, beauty, entertainment, whatever. But the Raiders, they were able to pull out an awesome victory against the Chargers, get into the playoffs. They do play the Bengals in the wild card round, so that game, I think matchup-wise, I don't think it favors the Raiders, in my opinion, very well. But they do have Max Crosby, who was just an absolute beast against a poor offensive line in the Chargers. And you look at the Bengals, and they don't have the best offensive line for themselves either. And I have the Raiders at number 12. Coming in at number 11, I have the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah, they got blown out by the Cowboys. I don't really care. They were playing backups. But just as a whole, they had a great season. They started 2-5, and they rallied to finish the season 9-8 and in the playoffs, a team that many people, including myself, had written off really early on in the season. But they just kept fighting and they kept playing. If we're looking at the numbers, they have a top 10 in total defense. They have the best rushing team in the NFL. Jalen Hurts can throw the ball. He can sling it. You have Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert. They have Miles Sanders. Like, they have pieces around them. And they seem to be improving each week. Nick Sirianni, the guy's easy to make fun of. He's gotten them in a great spot to succeed in the playoffs, just succeed as a whole in the season. They play the Bucs this week. I think that's going to be a very, very tough matchup for the Eagles. But just the Eagles as a whole, I know they got blown out by the Cowboys. I don't really look much into that game. It was a Week 18 game. And I'll be honest, I didn't watch that game. I didn't watch a single second of the Cowboys-Eagles game. I just know the Eagles had a shit ton of backups in that game. And that the Cowboys hung 51 on them in a meaningless game. But you just look at the Eagles, mad respect to them. The fact that they're even here is just, it's impressive. And credit to Nick Sirianni. I think the Eagles, for their future, and especially with the Carson Wentz situation that they went through last year, I think the Eagles are in a fantastic spot heading into next season and heading into the playoffs. Coming in at number 10, we have the Cardinals. Now, to me, I think this team is very fraudulent. I really do. They got destroyed by the Seahawks, and they fell apart late in the season, down the stretch, and they lost 4 of the last 5 games. Kyler Murray was not playing well, has not played well recently, but we know that they can be explosive. You look when they acquired Zach Ertz mid-season. He's been a great asset to them. James Conner, when he's on, he's been great. Christian Kirk is very talented, and they have a very, very good defense. But the Cardinals are just inconsistent. I think you can chalk that down to also Cliff Kingsbury and his entire career coaching. He started off hot every season and then completely fallen off. But the Cardinals, I don't want to write them off, even though I think they're fraudulent. They do play the Rams in the wild card round, which again is going to be a game that I have no idea how to judge that game. None whatsoever, because both of these two teams are pretty bad right now. But I don't want to write off the Cardinals because I know the talent that Kyler Murray has, and I know the talent around that team, and I know what that team can do. So a lot of these teams are hard for me to write off, even though I really, really want to. But for now, I have the Cardinals at number 10. Coming in at number 9 is the Los Angeles Rams. Now, they did win the NFC West because the Cardinals lost to the Seahawks. But still, I'm not impressed with this Rams team whatsoever. They fell apart in the second half against the 49ers, losing 27-24. Their first half was great. Like the first half looked like the offense that we thought they were going to be this entire season. Cooper Kupp looking amazing. You have Tyler Higbee making unbelievable catches. You have Van Jefferson. You had Matthew Stafford making the great throws. But in the second half, they just completely fell apart. And Matthew Stafford he was throwing interceptions again. And the problem with this team is they're having troubles putting consecutive games together back to back. They're having troubles putting consecutive halves together back to back that are really good. Like you look at the Ravens game, terrible in the first half, really good in the second half. And then you look at this one, really good in the first half, and then really bad in the second half. So the Rams are they're a very good team, but very inconsistent from half to half, let alone game to game. And then you look at their defense. Again, I'm not writing home on that defense. They have Aaron Donald, but other than that, I'm not really writing home on this defense. They seem to be having a lot of internal problems, and they're fighting each other like the Washington football team was. I'm not impressed with this Rams team whatsoever. They play the Cardinals in the wild card round, and as I mentioned, that game, I have no idea how to judge either one of those teams because I know the potential of both of those teams. Obviously, I think the Rams have just a tad bit better of a team, but I think those two teams match up the best out of any of these teams in the playoffs. But right now, I have the Rams at number 9. Coming in at number 8, we have the San Francisco 49ers. Now, they did beat the Rams to get into the playoffs, but again, another flawed team. You have Jimmy Garoppolo, who is literally a roller coaster. He makes some bad throws, and then he becomes literally the most elite receiver that I think some of us have ever seen in a 2-minute drill, and he's just slinging the ball down the field. So the 49ers, I think they're a really good football team. I think Deebo Samuel is an absolute stud. I think he's easily the most entertaining guy to watch in the NFL this season. He's the best wide receiver running back on the 49ers, and I don't even think it's close. But I think the main issue is with Jimmy Garoppolo and his inconsistency. Now, I like Jimmy Garoppolo, but some of those interceptions he threw against the Rams were not pretty. But just his ability to command it in a 2-minute drill under pressure, like his ability under pressure is just absolutely insanely good. And that's why it's hard for me to write off a 49ers team, because you look at them, they were under pressure against the Packers earlier on this season. They didn't win the game, but they made it close. They just left too much time for Aaron Rodgers. You look at this game, Jimmy Garoppolo again under pressure. looking great. They have a top 3 defense in the NFL. And this might be a hot take, but I think this is the actual team that nobody wants to face in the playoffs because they can run the ball great. And then they're facing the Cowboys, who we'll get to in a second, is another team that is very, very inconsistent and a team that, again, has major flaws. But the Rams, I like them. I like them, or the 49ers. I like them a lot. I like the 49ers a lot. But Jimmy Garoppolo can be quite frustrating sometimes. And there's one game in particular, that Titans game, is a reason why you can see they want to move off of him. But again, the 49ers, I can't write this team off. I think their run game's too good. I think their defense is amazing. And they're just a team that's impossible to write off. And so I have the 49ers at number 8. Coming in at number 7, we have the Dallas Cowboys. Now, they beat up on the Eagles backups. But I think that's the problem with the Cowboys. Because they'll beat up on backups and bad teams like the Washington football team. But then they play the actual playoff teams. They're not good. The only playoff teams they've beaten is a rookie quarterback in Mac Jones, who has shown that he can't do anything under pressure. And then the Philadelphia Eagles, who, yeah, they beat him earlier in the season. That was like week 2, but then now you look at them and they were playing all backups. So I have major question marks about the Dallas Cowboys. Ever since that Dak injury, the team hasn't looked right. The Michael Gallup injury hasn't helped them whatsoever. But I still think they have a really, really good team. They've shown it for up until that Patriots game. That's the team we know they can be, and I think they can get back to it. I mean, Zeke has been kind of disappointing. Tony Pollard, just the run offense for the Cowboys, has been kind of disappointing recently, and it's kind of disappeared. But they have a much improved defense from last year. Micah Parsons should win Defensive Rookie of the Year. Trayvon Diggs, for me, is completely hit or miss. I don't think he's as good as people hype him up to be. But they do have Cedric Wilson, who steps up on the offense for the Cowboys ever since Michael Gallup got injured. And stat-wise, they're still the number 1 ranked team, ranked offense, I should say, in the NFL. But they do play the 49ers, which I think the 49ers match up much better against the Cowboys than people are going to give them credit for. So right now, I have the Cowboys at 7. Coming in at number 6, I have the Buffalo Bills. Now, they won the AFC East by beating the Jets. Offensively, though, I think Josh Allen has struggled badly at times this season. Their run game has gotten a lot better, I'd say, in the last few weeks, and their defense is, by stats and numbers-wise, is the best in the NFL. I just don't know what to make of Josh Allen play to play, week to week. Like, Josh Allen at times this season has played like an MVP, and then sometimes this season he's played poorly. So I don't know what to make of the Bills, but they have a great defense. They have Josh Allen, when he's playing great, is impossible to be stopped. They have a great receiving core. They have Josh Allen, again, like I said, who can play great at times. And they play the Patriots in the wild card round, which I think they match up great with them. I think the Bills, as much as I think they're up and down this season, I still think they're a very good football team. I still think Josh Allen is very, very good. And I have the Bills at number 6. Coming in at number 5, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, they have had one hell of a season. Yeah, they just lost to the Browns in a meaningless game. Nobody cares. That game doesn't really matter. But they have Joe Burrow, who's literally a long shot MVP, who had an unbelievable season. Honestly, could win comeback player of the year, if you ask me. You have Jamar Chase taking over the league offensive rookie of the year caliber season. Probably will win that. You have T. Higgins, CJ Uzama, Tyler Boyd, and then you add Joe Mixon, just insanely good offensive talent that they have. My only issue with the Bengals is their inconsistency, and their pass defense and their offensive line might be the issue for them coming into the playoffs. Now, they play the Raiders, which I think they have a fairly good chance as long as they can contain Max Crosby. But I think Joe Burrow is such a good playmaker that I don't think that it'll matter as much. And he's on a week's rest after that injury that he sustained against the Chiefs. Hopefully it wasn't too serious. It doesn't look like it was. But you look at the Bengals, electric offense, explosive offense, just a very good offense that I really like. I think it's more than good. I think Joe Burrow is starting to climb himself up into that elite status of quarterbacks in the NFL. I'd give him another year, but if he makes a deep playoff run this year and looks fantastic in every game, I think I'd start to consider Joe Burrow as one of the top 5, top 8 quarterbacks in the NFL. And I think arguably you could already have them there. But I think the Bengals, they're a very good team. I don't think they're quite there yet, but right now I have the Bengals at number 5. Coming in at number 4, you have the Tennessee Titans. They are the 1 seed in the AFC, so obviously they're not going to be playing this week on Wild Card Weekend. However, The AFC playoffs will run through Nashville. They played the Texans close. I mean, Davis Mills tried his absolute hardest to completely take over that game. That would have been sweet. Danny Amendola had a really good game. But they were able to come out with the victory. They have a very good defense, and their running game, like, once Derrick Henry went down, I was off the Titans bandwagon for a while. I didn't think their offense was good. I didn't think Ryan Tannehill was very good. I didn't think their run offense was going to be able to sustain it. And not only was I wrong, I actually think the Titans are a very good team and a very impressive team. Like I said, their run game is starting to heat up, especially without Derrick Henry. And now they get Derrick Henry back, and you also have Ryan Tannehill, who I don't think is a top echelon of an NFL quarterback, who is now starting to make plays with Julio Jones and A.J. Brown, who are heating up at the right time. You get Derrick Henry back, who that helps Ryan Tannehill in the pass game. So I think the Titans are a scary team. They're getting healthy. They're getting their guys back. And the guys that are coming back and are playing better right now, even with Derrick Henry out, this team is going to be dangerous. Ryan Tannehill, A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, and Derrick Henry, and that defense. I think the Titans will make some noise in these playoffs, and I have them as my number 4 team. Coming in at number 3 is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, this is a team some people may think I have ranked too high, but at the same time, I know as a Chiefs fan and I know as a fan of the NFL, we're always supposed to be like, oh, Tom Brady didn't legitimately win all of his championships, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. Tom Brady's great, especially with everything that they've gone through this season. They're the number 2 seed in the NFC, even with all their injuries and AB quitting. You have Mike Evans and Gronk coming up huge for them. You have Brady throwing for 326 yards, 3 touchdowns against the Panthers, who have a great defense, and I think are a head coach and a quarterback away from being a top contending team. You have Gronk and Evans combining for 226 of those yards. So those two guys are stepping up in their absence. So I think even with all these injuries, I think the Buccaneers will be fine. You have Tom Brady playing like an MVP. This team is getting healthy at the right time with hopefully Leonard Fournette and Levante David coming back. Those two guys are going to make massive impacts once they do come back. And honestly, as much as it's going to hate coming from a Chiefs fan, I think they have a legitimate chance of going to the Super Bowl. Part of me this season was up and down on Tom Brady. I even made a video about Tom Brady getting bailed out, blah, blah, blah. I still think Tom Brady is a legitimately good quarterback. And yes, it seems like he has to have talent around him to be good. But you can make that argument for almost every quarterback. Like, Tom Brady took a JV level squad in his last year in New England to the wild card round. So I don't think it's fair to write off Tom Brady as much as we do. Obviously, I mean, people get irritated with his checkdowns, but like, look at this. All the crap that the Buccaneers have faced, and if it was any other quarterback in any other team that was going through all this adversity with AB quitting, all these injuries that they're sustaining, Chris Godwin being out, one of the best receivers in the NFL, if other teams were going through those problems, they would have folded and hid in a corner by now. But they have Tom Brady, they have Bruce Arians, and they have a great group of culture and people around them, and it doesn't allow for their team to just fold under pressure. And I think with the Buccaneers playing the Eagles this week, I think this is going to be one heck of a football game. You saw the Buccaneers last year in the wild card round when they faced off against the Washington football team. So I think it's going to be a great game. I think it has potential to be just as good as it was last year in the wild card round. But for me, I have the Buccaneers at number 3. Coming in at number 2, we have the Kansas City Chiefs, the number 2 seed in the AFC, so badly wanted the Texans to beat the Titans. However, they will end up playing the Steelers on wild card weekend because the Titans were able to defeat the Texans and the Chiefs were able to defeat the Broncos on Saturday. Now, the Chiefs, another team that I've literally just watched a montage before I started recording this of everybody writing off the Chiefs all season long. You had Michael Irvin putting a fork in it. You had everybody saying the Colts were the most dangerous team in the NFL to face in the playoffs, and they're not even there. But the Chiefs, starting 3-4, everything looked bad. Then they win 8 straight games, finish the season with a loss to the Bengals, and then an ugly win to the Broncos. Yes, I understand. You know, that happened. It wasn't pretty. However, for Mahomes to be having an off year, still throwing for almost 5,000 yards and 37 touchdowns, if that's an off year, give me that Mahomes every single year. And I think the Chiefs are a better team than people give them credit for, because people to this day are still writing them off. They still are. They don't think they're very good. They don't think the defense is very good. Okay, yeah, the defense, guess what? It was pretty bad the last couple of weeks. But you have Spags, who has playoff experience. You have Mahomes, and who has amazing amount of playoff experience, and he's only been in the NFL for a few years. And I think this defense, and they're going up against the Steelers, who they dominated last time. All it takes is one game, even if it's a bad team, to get your swagger back. And guess what? It's going to take one game in the playoffs for the Chiefs to get their swagger back. And I think they're still a very dangerous team when it comes to the playoffs this year. And I don't think it's fair to write off their defense either. They've had one bad game in a stretch of about 10 or 12 where they didn't look good. Other than that, the Chiefs were arguably the best defense in the NFL for a stretch of about 9 weeks. So I think the Chiefs, as a whole, they have Mahomes, they have Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill. They have some of the best weapons in the NFL, and they have Chris Jones, Melvin Ingram, Frank Clark on that defensive line. They have arguably one of the best offensive lines in football right now. I think the Chiefs are a very dangerous team, and I'm sick of people writing them off because I think it's a mistake to write the Chiefs off, and I have them at number 2. Coming in at number 1, we have the Green Bay Packers. Now, they have clinched home field advantage to the playoffs with the number 1 seed, but come on, the Packers, I think, are by far the best team in the NFL. They're the number 1 seed, 13 wins in 3 straight seasons. Matt LaFleur, I know you don't get credit for 13 wins in 3 straight seasons, but we got to put more respect on his name because I still don't think people talk about him enough, if you ask me. I mean, they did lose a meaningless game to the Lions where Jordan Love looked absolutely terrible, but Aaron Rodgers went into that game, kind of used it as a warm-up game, still threw 2 touchdowns in that warm-up game for the playoffs, but they have Devontae Adams, who's the best wide receiver in the NFL. Again, like I said, Rodgers and MVP, probably going to win MVP back-to-back years. Allen Lazard becoming an underrated part of that offense, definitely stepping up. They have a great 1-2 punch of running backs in Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. They might get Jair Alexander, David Bakhtiari, and Zadarius Smith back, which is just going to make them even more of a disgustingly good team in the NFL. They're getting healthy. They're playing great football. Obviously, the last few weeks, they haven't been able to close out opponents like the Browns and the Ravens. However, I'm not really worried about that because late in the season, these games honestly started to not matter as much for the Packers because they had already clinched the number 1 seed late in the season. But their run defense, a bit iffy. That's something that needs to be worked on. But they're winning their games. On top of that, all the off-field issues that they've dealt with all season long. To be the number 1 seed for the Packers to win a Super Bowl, I think it would just cap off one of the wildest NFL seasons and the wildest season for just a franchise as a whole. And that would be really, really cool to see, hopefully, a Chiefs-Packers Super Bowl. Now, those are my power rankings heading into Wild Card Weekend. Now, again, like I said, a lot of these teams were hard to rank, if you ask me, because, as I said, every single one of these teams have major, major flaws. But I think at some point, I still think all these teams, except for Pittsburgh, because I think they're absolutely the worst team in the playoffs right now. I don't think they have a chance of doing anything. But if you look at teams 1 through 13, in my opinion, are great. They have a chance to make some noise in these playoffs. I think it's going to be an entertaining playoffs. This season was entertaining. It was great. And I'm just ready for some playoff football. Give me your power rankings of the 14 teams remaining in the NFL for the season, and I will see you in the next one.